Hey guys, my name is Philip Reynolds, and I'm the senior editor for the Daily Runner, and here's are my guests.
I'm Julio Quintana, the writer and director of the feature film The Vessel.
And I'm Marla Quintana, the producer of the feature film The Vessel, and also Julio's wife.
Yeah, so their film is going to be showing here tonight, and we're just doing a quick interview with them before that to get you guys a little bit more of a glimpse into the process and a little bit of a behind the scenes. So to start things off, what was your inspiration for this film?
Well, for me, I did religious studies in college at the University of Texas, and so I've always been attracted to stories about mystery and the supernatural, miraculous, and so when I was trying to come up with what the movie I wanted to make, I became really interested in near-death experiences.
Okay.
Because I just think it's really fascinating. Somebody, their heart can stop for 10 seconds on an operating table, and they're enlightened for 6 months, and they don't. And so that was a really interesting concept to me. So I wrote a character who drowned and woke up again, and just created a story around him of how that affected his community. So that's kind of the seed of it.
Gotcha. Wow. Well, it's awesome. So how are you intending viewers to react, and what dialogue and discussions are you hoping to generate with this film?
I think that the central sort of theme in the film is kind of about what is, first, what is our purpose in life? When something so inexplicable happens, this horrible tragedy of losing all your children, these questions of like, why did God do this to us? And so I think that a lot of times we try to define God, and we try to, we want sort of answers on who God is and what he does and what our purpose is. And I think the point of the film is that sometimes these mysterious things happen and we can't explain them. And that's okay, because sometimes what happens at the end is even more beautiful than we could have anticipated or imagined. And I think that that's really the central question, theme of the film. Wow,
that's awesome. Definitely. So I know this is a little bit change of pace. Kind of more on the technical side. What were some of the unexpected challenges or insights that came from making this film, considering that you were filming for English and Spanish?
Mm-hmm.
Well, surprisingly, you would think that shooting the movie, because we basically shot every dialogue scene twice, and so you would think that would dramatically increase the workload, but it actually was pretty simple. I mean, once everybody was bilingual, so we would shoot the scene we would get it all right in English or in Spanish, depending on how they wanted to start, and then we would just flip languages and we would just do it in Spanish. And so it really ended up in the shooting. It really only ended up being a couple more takes per scene, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. The real challenge is everything after that, because I spent 6 months editing the English version, and then I had to start all over again and edit the entire Spanish version. And you kind of sometimes you get attached to the way somebody said something in the English version, and then it's a little nuanced in the Spanish version.
Right.
So the movie is virtually identical, but a lot of the challenge was trying to figure out how to try to match the English without losing the magic of the Spanish.
Yeah, a lot of people thought it would double our time during production, but it didn't.
No.
But it did double our time in post-production.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so was that where a lot of the difficulty came, was in that editing process and just working through that?
Yeah, I mean, because and then every single thing you do, you have to. We color correct the English version. Everything has to be copied to the Spanish version. Every link you ever make to send to anybody, every DVD, every
sound mixed twice.
Has to be duplicated, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, this morning we did an interview in English, and then they swapped and we did the same interview in Spanish.
Okay.
So I mean, everything becomes doubled. But the advantage is that people get to see it in whatever way they prefer. And strangely, we thought the obvious thing would be English speakers want to see it in English, Spanish speakers want to see it in Spanish, and that actually hasn't been necessarily the case. Yeah, English speakers have actually found the Spanish version to feel more authentic. We have Puerto Ricans.
So we have a Spanish version with English subtitles, because there's certain Americans who want to see the more authentic version.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. Well, I can say for myself, I'd probably want to watch the Spanish one also. So I'm glad to hear that. Definitely.
Yeah, and that's what we've been finding. Yeah, so.
That's awesome. Wow. Yeah. So you can expound a little more on this next question. I know both of you, I was reading up a little bit, you both have some experience working on Tree Life and then some other films and projects in the past. So you just go ahead and talk a little bit about your experience, and then how you were able to use that experience for the film.
Well, Julio got me. I was on a law school track.
Okay.
And Julio basically proposed to me the year before I graduated and said, "Hey, why don't you take the first year of, law school off?" And in that year, our first year of marriage, he thought we would get a divorce if I went to law school. Basically.
A lawyer.
But anyways, he kind of wrote me into producing, and he got me my first job on a film.
Okay.
And that first job eventually led for me to start interning on The Tree of Life, which led to me getting a job as Terrence Malick's assistant and the post-production coordinator. And then I brought Julio on as an editing intern. So Julio was an editing intern for Terry for a few months, and they developed a relationship. Terry became his mentor.
Oh, wow.
Then Julio started writing the script, started thinking about having Martin Sheen in it because he's a devout Catholic, and we have a role for a priest. And Julio was talking to Terry about the concept, and telling him about near-death experiences, and Terry said, who you should talk to is Martin Sheen, because Martin Sheen has had a near-death experience. And so Julio wrote the script for 2 years for Martin without Martin even knowing about it, and with Terry reminding him, like, hey, when's that script going to be ready? And finally, when it was ready, Terry sent it to Martin Sheen on a Friday, and 2 days later, Martin called us and said he wanted to be in the film.
Wow.
So that's really how the film happened.
Yeah, and I think as far as from an influence standpoint, I think there's obvious. You can just look at the trailer and you'll see like obvious technical influences and aesthetic influences that Terry had on me and on our cinematographer Thiago Benet. But I think on a more fundamental level, I remember I was interning and I didn't know what Tree of Life was about, and nobody could really explain it to me as it was being shot. And then I read this screenplay for it, and it just kind of blew my mind because I realized that it felt like something that philosophy students would be studying in 100 years rather than measured on some opening weekend performance. And I think the biggest influence that working on Tree of Life had, and Terry in general had on me, was it's showing me that you can actually tackle subject matter that's not typical. I mean, it's so standard to make a bank heist film or a buddy detective film or whatever. But and those are great films, but it's very difficult to try to make something where the central theme is essentially spiritual. And so I think that's how he really influenced me. It was trying to bite off a subject matter that I could never do it the way he does it, but he gave me the courage to try to address a central question that really is very difficult to make movies about.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah. Now, do you guys see, with having kind of delved into that area of filmmaking and of writing, going beyond the surface level, do you see much of a future of that in coming? Basically, do you see that as a possible, not necessarily trend in the future, but more films coming out with deep philosophical insights and questions that challenge us?
I think so. I mean, I think faith films do very well. I mean, I think people are hungry for that kind of content. I think the more films sometimes that Hollywood produces that are against people's values, the more they're hungry and they're longing for films that, they feel are positive and inspiring and have a glimmer of hope. So I do think that there's a market for it. I do think that the faith market is going to continue to grow. I think our film is a little bit different than some of the faith films out there because, some of those faith films are they're very commercial, like they're very clear in their message. And our film kind of hugs this line between being a faith film and being an art film. And sometimes people don't really know how to categorize it. Yeah. So we'll see how we do. I don't know, we'll let you know after it's released if there's going to be a market for it in the future.
Definitely, I'd love to hear.
And the reality is that they're just difficult movies to make because, there's the cliche you have to write what you know, and I think to make something that's just kind of philosophical, the writer has to be interested in that subject matter. So I guess the real question is, will more people who are interested in that subject matter get into the industry? Because you can't, even if there's a demand for it, Hollywood can't suddenly like flip on a switch and writers who worked on Seinfeld are suddenly going to necessarily write a Malick film. So I think, I don't know. I guess I'd be curious to see. I'd hope that maybe movies like ours will get younger people who are interested in that sort of thing to maybe tackle it themselves. You know. I don't know.
Now you kind of answered this a little bit earlier, but what way do you think that? How do you think this movie will resonate with the Christian community specifically, and how do you think that Christians should go about starting to look at films like this more and giving them maybe another glance and not passing them up right away because they're not super commercial or family friendly necessarily?
Right.
How would you? What I guess advice would you give or ideas would you put out there for people to start embracing and thinking more about films like this, specifically in the Christian community?
So I believe that we made a film that Christians that is more for adult Christians. You know, you can't go watch it with your 5-year-old.
Right.
You know, and I think that that's.
And that's not because there's any vulgar content or anything. It's just because of
it's
that.
just more
this
intense
heavy
themes.
subject
the subject
matter.
matter.
Yeah.
These children die. These people are confused. They're not having any children. It's about love and passion, and so and I think that I feel like adult Christians need themes that they can talk about as a couple, you know, and as adults. And some of our most rewarding moments are whenever somebody will do a screening and an adult young couple will come up to us and say, like, this is what you hire. I mean, this is the kind of film that you hire a babysitter for because my husband and I will be talking about this film for days.
Yeah.
So those are really special moments for us, and I think that there do need to be more adult Christian films out there.
Yeah, definitely. That's awesome to hear. Especially, I know a lot of the film students. I find a lot of my peers, at least who are film majors, running into that as an issue. Just trying to get Christians to embrace sometimes some of these more gray situations that aren't super clear cut and don't necessarily have a right or wrong answer immediately. And I think that that's awesome that we're making films that address that. So.
Well,
it's exciting for me to hear that you say that people are looking into those here at this school. I mean, that's exciting.
Yeah, because I think that there's the part of it is what she's saying is that I kind of feel like we need to separate the idea of a Christian film from a family film. That sometimes they're the same thing, but sometimes they're not. But I also think that I think it might be healthy to try to separate the idea of a Christian film from a political film, because I think that there's a tendency to maybe see a faith-based film as a cause or some sort of political statement that we're making a political statement to the rest of the community that doesn't agree with you. And I think that so effectively it's like you're almost trying to make a movie for others, but I think it's also important to make an honest film for ourselves, that we ask ourselves honest questions, that we're willing to take a hard look at how we feel. How do we deal with tragedy? I mean, how are we honestly feeling? Do we blame God when our children are taken from us, and how do we overcome that? Like, those are admitting that we have those questions it shouldn't. I think that that's just as important as making a strong affirmation of religious political beliefs, which tends to be what I think a lot of those films are. Right,
and allowing audiences to wrestle with things that aren't comfortable, and that and
trust that they'll come to the right conclusions.
Right. Awesome. So I know the title's a very interesting title. I know that there's some aspects of the ocean, of course, and that theme, but talk to me about the significance of the title of the movie.
Well, I mean, there's a literal meaning which is not shown in the trailer, but the central story is that the kid who drowns and wakes up again, he starts building a boat out of the remains of the elementary school. So there's a literal meaning of that vessel. There's also, of course, like the more spiritual meaning of a vessel, that he's relaying some sort of message, or he carries some sort of greater meaning than what we're seeing. So for us, it's a very nuanced. A vessel is a very nuanced word, and it's loaded with meaning historically. So.
Gotcha. Wow, that's awesome. Now, kind of, I mentioned this a little bit ago, but a lot of students come here wanting to get into film. A lot of Christian students who want to integrate their faith into film, but then who also just want to, make it in the film industry and do well. What advice would you give to them as, a fledgling professionals in this area?
As far as making films like choosing whether to make films that are more Christian or more
or just how to get into
Just
it.
getting into the film industry, and if you want, interject how to approach it with a Christian worldview and how to proceed with it.
I think the hardest part, I think one of the hardest parts is probably the writing phase. I think that if you want to be a filmmaker, you have to have the discipline to sit down and write a script, and that is so challenging, and I couldn't do it, and I don't want to do it, and I have no interest in that. But this film took 2 years to write, off and on, and that's I think probably the hardest part. And I think as far as, I'll let you speak to making films with a Christian worldview.
Well, I think you have to really learn your craft, and it's something that even I'm still learning. But you learn your craft really by making mistakes and just sitting down every day and grinding it out. Just write. You have to write 100 terrible pages to get 2 good pages, and I think so. It even whether it's making Christian films or secular films or whatever you want, however you want to say it, at the end of the day, the people who succeed, it's just kind of like in most industries, are the people who really sit down and actually get the work done, and then really it's a combination of just not stopping, not quitting, and luck. We had the luck to be connected with Terrence Malick, and that led to Martin Sheen. But I very easily could have been fallen under a filmmaker who didn't have the same sensibilities that I did, and it would have maybe not have been so fruitful. Right. So I acknowledge there's a huge element of luck that we had, but really, what I see is that I have friends who create things that they actually sit down and they just do them, and then I have really talented friends who don't, and the difference seems to be just who can sit in the sofa the longest with the laptop on their lap.
Gotcha.
It's the beginning. And then if you have a good script, actors will want to come on board. And once you have the actors, it's so overwhelming to think back on the last 7 years of our life and everything that it took to get this film made. I'm so proud of where we are, but looking back is kind of terrifying to think, oh my God, to climb this mountain again, it's overwhelming. But I think that it's something that you just have to take it one step at a time, and make sure that you don't skip out of the script, because once you have a good story, then you'll get the actors, and once you have the actors, you'll get the financing, and then the balls just keep on rolling from there. And
then there's also so many more opportunities now. You can take a 5D, or you can take an A7S or whatever, and you can go out and you can just shoot your movie, and you can put it on Vimeo, and you can learn that way. And that really doesn't cost anything other than just a lot of time, and you pay people in pizza, and that's how you learn. That's how we made short films that way, and so even if you don't get the money and you don't get a Martin Sheen or whatever, there's still an outlet for getting your content in front of people. You still have Kickstarter and Indiegogo and different ways to raise some money and get it done. And I have a friend who raised money on Indiegogo, and he made a feature with his mom and his aunt in his house, and he went to Cannes, and he went to
wow. And now he's got a 3-picture deal with
A24, and he's
awesome.
And he's a great guy, and I just saw him every year. He just stuck with it. He just kept making shorts, kept making content, and that's how he did it. So there's different paths to accomplish the goal, but the common denominator seems to be just an obsession with getting it done.
Gotcha. Wow, it's very encouraging to hear, at least, because I know a lot of students do work really hard, so in some ways it's kind of refreshing to know that you don't have to have like a golden egg moment, just put your head to the grindstone and push in some ways. But it's awesome to hear.
Yep.
One last question about the film: what was you guys' favorite part of working on the film? It could be anything. I know you said the writing was pretty tough, but sky's the limit.
I love casting. I think casting is, one of my favorite parts. Even though, it's ultimately Julio's decision, that's something that I really love. And I think the second place for me would be finding locations in our situation, just because we had to kind of make friends with this whole little community, and they got really behind the film, and so just kind of getting to know everybody there, getting their support of the film, and knowing everybody by first name. That was a really special experience for me.
Yeah.
I love shooting and being on set. I love working with actors. I love my background was before doing this was cinematography. I mean, so for me, getting to work with Chago Benet, the cinematographer on set. He's Puerto Rican. He was amazing. And working with the great actors, I'm never happier than when I'm on set. I feel like I write scripts so that I can go out and shoot them, and then
for 25 days. That's all.
25 days.
Yeah. The best part of the last 7 years has been 25 days.
And I think and it's weird. I don't really love writing. I don't love editing. I certainly don't love raising money and trying to get distribution and stuff. And none of those things
That's the worst part.
None of those things are fun. I love shooting, and so it was 25 days out of 7 years that. I remember when after we wrapped, we were running around the beaches of Puerto Rico and having a great time. And then a month later, I'm in a dark editing room, and I would be looking at the footage, and I would pause it whenever the camera would swing around, and I'd see the whole crew, and I was like, man, I remember that. That was fun, And so it was like a real, for me, it's like if I could just be shooting all the time, that's what I would do.
Okay.
I mean, I say that now we have a 10-month-old son who I just want to be with him all day. So now I don't know. Maybe I don't like shooting as much.
Gotcha. Well, so the last question is, are there any future works coming out or that we should be on the lookout for? I know you might not be able to say everything, but if there's anything you can give us a heads up about, I'm sure listeners and readers would love to know about it.
We actually work for a television production company in Austin called Batbridge Entertainment, and we're getting into scripted television. The company is, kind of started with docuseries.
Okay.
And Julio is basically the creative head of our scripted division. So that's what we're looking into next is television.
Yeah, we can't say what the project is, but it's I mean, for us, I think the process of making a movie is great, and we love it, but it does feel like more and more television is becoming a dominant force in our culture, and as a storytelling medium, it just seems to be it's evolving very quickly and becoming very mature, so we're gonna try television and see where that takes us.
Awesome. We'll all be on the lookout for what's coming up next. Very excited for it. So I would just like to thank you guys one last time. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
I'm sure our viewers and readers will love to hear all this and to look forward to what's coming up. So thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
You.
Appreciate it.